Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're in day 7 of the Automation Studio Bootcamp in our fundamentals series. Today we're going to be covering the import and export capabilities within Automation Studio. We've got one more session in our fundamentals session, which is this Thursday. Sorry, I've got the wrong date there. It's the should be the 12th of December. And we're going to be going over the contact model. And then we have 2 more hands-on sessions. We have a hands-on session that moved from tomorrow to Friday. We're going to be continuing to build out some more queries, and then might do some import, exporting of files the following Wednesday. Reach out in the channel if you'd like to volunteer for those hands-on sessions. We give you access to a Marketing Cloud environment. So today we're going to be going over, just giving an overview of importing and exporting, and then we're going to be going into a variety of the different types of import and export in Marketing Cloud. And then we're going to be doing a couple of them end-to-end in Marketing Cloud. We're going to do a file drop, we're going to do an S3 bucket, and we're going to do an export to an export folder, those 3 in detail, and then we'll wrap it up with tips at the end. Okay, so let's just give an overview of the different types of import-export options that you have. So at the top here, we've got the manual. We're probably all familiar with that, where you can take a CSV, usually, and you can import that into a data extension. You can also export a data extension to create a CSV. So those are the pretty straightforward ways to import data into Marketing Cloud. We're going to be covering some automated imports where you might have a data lake and you might use some sort of program to generate a file based on some sort of logic that you want to update. You could either drop that into an S3 bucket or use some FTP software to drop it into an import folder on the FTP in Marketing Cloud, and then use the import activity to pull in that data or update data in a data extension. There's also automated exporting. So you would create an automation with a data extract, a file transfer, that would drop it into the export folder of the FTP, and then you would use a FTP software to extract that file from the export folder and bring it over into a data lake. And then we've got a couple of sort of the out-of-the-box, not necessarily out-of-the-box, but standard configuration within Marketing Cloud and the other platforms within Salesforce. So the Salesforce CRM configuration, when you set up the connector, you can sync over all of those Salesforce objects, and they get collected in synchronized data extensions. And then in Data Cloud, you can create segments, activations, and populate data extensions as well. Just give you a bunch of different options that you have, quite a few for pulling in data into Marketing Cloud and also exporting that data as well. So we wanted to cover a couple of those in a little bit more detail, sort of talk about the what, the why, the how. So manual import and exports. So you're just going to be taking a CSV, uploading that into a data extension, or exporting from a data extension to a CSV. Relatively straightforward. Just create a CSV file. Make sure that that matches the columns in the data extension. And then, why would you use this? If you're doing populating some data in Marketing Cloud that you don't need to do on a regular basis, say it's just a one-time upload, then this can be a way to do that. So example use cases, say you're setting up a list of products in Marketing Cloud that don't change on a regular basis, that might be an option. Or if you're using a single send where you're just uploading a specific audience into Marketing Cloud that you use at a one-time basis, we certainly have seen that used in our experience. Salesforce objects via the connector. So if you have the connector set up, all of those Salesforce objects, most of them, can be synced over to Marketing Cloud. They are refreshed every 15 minutes. You would just need to set up the marketing connector, which is relatively straightforward. And why that, gives you full access of all the data in Salesforce CRM in Marketing Cloud, so you don't have to import those files. They're just basically synced over. It's like Marketing Cloud is on core. Use cases for this, we've seen this in Journey Builder. I think we use this in Automation Studio, setting up an automation that would pull in leads or contacts from those synchronized data extensions to nurture them, or even onboard customers that might be contacts that might have account information or different objects from Salesforce. If you were part of JB's Data Cloud Bootcamp, we did a session on how to incorporate data, import data from Data Cloud directly into Marketing Cloud. So this is bringing in those unified subscriber segments from Data Cloud and all that associated data from those different data sources. You would just need to connect Data Cloud to Marketing Cloud and then create a segment and activation. Why would you use this? Obviously, if your Data Cloud is the model, your database of record for your data, for your segments, you would want to use that. It also provides that chance to have that unified customer profile and all those data points. So it's definitely the most enriched segment that you can pull in for all of your importing. So examples, journeys that might rely on multi-platform data, be a good use case for that. File drop, import, we're going to be walking through this end to end. This imports a file and updates a data extension whenever a third-party program drops a file into a specific folder into Marketing Cloud. So how would you do that? You'd create a file location. You would create the functionality to drop that into the FT, into that folder. You'd create an automation that would have an import activity using the file drop activity and import activity to import that into a data extension. This would be used if you wanted to automatically update data in Marketing Cloud. So an example of this is that if you have products that are changing on a daily basis, say you have a website where there's new products every day, you might want to use this where that third-party data source is dropping in that file every morning. You're pulling that in, updating your products in Marketing Cloud if you're using them for, say, an abandoned cart email where you need all that product information. And then you can also update subscribers from the data lake as well. If you have data on subscribers, maybe it's retail visit data or other data coming from website activity, you might be wanting to update subscribers on a regular basis as well. So it'd be triggered by a file drop import. We'll also showcase, very similar to this is using an S3 bucket as well. So again, the same sort of use cases, keeping that data refreshed and updated in Marketing Cloud, whether that's a file drop or using different types of technologies. ETL, we covered this earlier on in the session. If you need to automatically do a way to update subscriber data in Marketing Cloud, we definitely recommend the ETL process. So you basically identify subscribers and then it updates the subscriber database, usually all subscribers automatically. So that's, we won't go into too much detail on the ETL. Maybe we'll just showcase if we have time. We've covered this earlier on in this session. And then exporting, dropping files in an export folder. So we talked a lot about importing. You can also do the same exporting to export those files so that that third-party, data lake or other source can take that data and bring it into its data lake and use that data. So something might be useful. We've seen use cases with clients where they're exporting the engagement data from those emails or SMS to bring that into the data lake if that is the database of record for those subscribers. So let's go into Marketing Cloud and let's go and do our first automation, which will be a file drop automation. We've got a couple of tabs, a couple of browsers here going. And let's see, we've got Marketing Cloud in here. The first thing that we want to do is just, show you, the import export functionality. I think we're all might be familiar with it, but if you need to import data into a data extension, the import button's here. You can also export this data. Since we have data populated in here, you can choose how you want that to be exported. Typically, depending on the size, if it's not too big, you can just export it to a browser download, and that'll export that as a CSV. You can see that coming in there as well. So that's the functionality that Marketing Cloud gives you to import and export. If we just click on the import button here, you can select a file to import. You can select different types of settings. You'll basically want to make sure that your fields line up with your CSV there. We won't go into details there. Just wanted to cover that option there as well. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to want to do for our file drop is we want to create a specific folder in our FTP so that we can designate that it imports, from a specific folder, not just the import folder. Typically, when you're doing a file drop, it probably makes the most sense to do that. So let me pull up FileZilla, and what we'll do is we'll connect into our FTP for our, for the account that is set up in Marketing Cloud. Now, before I do this, let me just quickly cover, we did write an article, and we did cover this a little bit earlier on, earlier in the session about how to create a, to connect to your FTP using FileZilla. So let me just drop this article in the chat. It's a good resource to sort of set this up end to end. We won't go into a lot of detail, just cover this really quickly. So first thing the article does is it has you go to the trust site for Salesforce, just so that you can determine what your stack is. So in this example, we're determining that this is stack 1. That's helpful as a setting in your SFTP setup in FileZilla. The next thing you're going to want to go is to go into setup under FTP accounts under data management. You're going to create a new FTP connection. You'll want to use your email address and save that password. That password is going to be needed as well. You can use password as the authentication options. Relatively straightforward there. You want to grant as much access as you need, not too much. And you don't necessarily need to worry about IP allow lists right off the bat. You can keep that same folder directory. And then download I'm using the FileZilla tool today. And it's a free tool. So when you create that, you create a new site, select Site Manager, you create a new site, and you'll want to do the settings where, first of all, you use the same syntax here. You put in your stack, you put in the user number that's created whenever you create that FTP and the password, and then you hit connect, and then that will pull you into your FTP. So definitely take a look at that article, and let's go in. We're just going to connect into that same setup as stack 1 that we're using _6 for FTP. Let's connect, and we'll take a look at our FTP setup. So you can see out of the box, we've got import folder, we've got export folders, different files that you can see that have been put in here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder. So let's call this auto file drop. And let me just save that in a notepad just so that I've got that saved. So we'll create a folder, and then you can see, you can click into that folder, and there should be nothing in there. So that's the first step you want to do, is to create a folder that you can determine, you know, what data that you want to put in there. And then I think it's usually a good practice to drop in the data that you're looking to automate on the file drop. So I'm just going to take a file and drop it into this folder. You can see it drops it into that folder. This is a CSV file. Let me just quickly share what this file is doing. For our use case, we are doing a, we're going to use the example of the use case where we are part of we have a website, and Northern Trail Outfitters, we want to update some information on a daily basis about product information. So we've got the name of the product, we've got the SKU, we've got the location of where that image is in Marketing Cloud, the price, if it has a sales price, you know, some information about a product that we want to update on a regular basis. So we've got, you know, our website's hooked up so that every morning it drops a file named, you know, named this, you know, NTO product feed, say, and it drops it into our FTP. We tell them the specific folder to drop it in. Now what we want to do is we want to pull this in and update a data extension in Marketing Cloud. So let's go into Automation Studio, and we're going to go back and we'll create a new automation. So we have a Auto Studio folder. We're going to create a new automation. We'll call this Auto File Drop. This is going to be a file drop automation. So let's configure that. So we want to, you can see it automatically pulls up the import folder. So we're going to select that auto file drop folder, and we want to use a naming pattern. And since our file was, we'll say it begins with NTO product. Let's see, it just begins with, and let's just double check the name of that file. So it's NTO product feed. We'll just change that to product feed. And we'll hit done. And there we go. That's our setting up our file drop to activate every time a file has been dropped in there. And then let's do an import. So we're going to select this import activity. Let's create a new import definition. We'll call this the same auto file drop. Let's send a notification to me once that has gone through. We're going to say this is coming from a specific file location. And what we'll also want to pull this in is we need to create a file location for where to pull this in from as well. So let's go into setup. We're going to want to go to our file locations section. And let's go take a look at one that was set up before. Let's just copy this syntax because we want to make sure that we follow this exact syntax, which is very important. Import / and then the name of the folder. So let's go back to our file locations. We're going to create a new one. We're going to call this the same name, which was the auto file drop. And we're going to select the relative location under the FTP site. And let's copy in that syntax, import data lake. And the FTP name that we created, let's go back to our FTP, is auto file drop. So it's the same name as this. Let's just copy this auto file drop. And we're going to want to paste that in there as well. So let's hit save. And that will save if that file is located there. So let's go back to our automation. And let's see if that auto file drop is not there. So we're just going to hit cancel. We'll come right back here. Let's hit save. We're going to delete this. We're going to create a new import activity. And we're going to call this auto file drop. We're going to email my address. We're going to hit next. We're going to do it from a specific file location. And we're going to select that auto file drop. We're going to use, that is the naming convention. So we're going to copy that naming convention here. And you can see that it's a matching file. That all looks good. A reason why you want to just sort of drop in that file in there, and just so that you can see that and use that to connect it for the importing. And then we want to select a data extension that we want to do the update. So let me just go to another tab here. We'll go into our Auto Bootcamp folder. And to save time, we've created a data extension that we want to use for the products. So let's just clear out this data. And let's just take a look at these properties. So we've got this, should be matching the same fields in our CSV file. And we're mindful of the lengths and the data types so that this will work successfully. So with that data extension created, we're going to want to select that product feed data extension. And let's hit next. And now we want to map these fields so that they can, populate the data accordingly. So we can hit map manually. We're going to choose that CSV file that we had created. Open that, and that'll give us all of those fields that we can map. So let's start off with SKU. Let's do product. And then we have some optional fields, but let's populate all of those fields. We're just going to drag these over to each field, and then link is the last one. Just scroll down here, and let's put another link. Okay. And then we're going to just do this for an overwrite. We're just going to assume in this example that the entire product file is being uploaded. It may be, you might want an adder and update instead if that is more, makes more sense for your use case. We'll hit next. And then we've got the import activity all configured there. So we'll hit finish. Let's hit save. Let's activate this file drop. And then we're going to go back into our FTP. Not that we need to delete this, but we'll just delete it just for the heck of it. And then we'll drop that file in there again, which should hopefully trigger that automation. So let me just drop in that file. NTO product feed, I dropped it into this auto file drop. Let's go back to the automation. And we've got this handy refresh button that should kick that off any second. Sometimes it does take a minute to process. We'll just keep refreshing here. Okay, while we're waiting for this, let's go into our next setup, which is we're going to do a S3 bucket. Sometimes it takes a second. Let's go into the S3 bucket use case and set up an automation to do that. So we're going to create a new automation. Duplicate this tab. Back here and check. Hopefully this is running soon. It's doing its thinking. So we'll come back here. Let's go into our automation folder. And let's create a new, so let's do an S3 product. we're going to do the same scenario, importing the same data, but having it come through through an S3 bucket. Let's hit save. We're going to do a scheduled automation, and we're going to again do an import activity. So we'll fill in the steps here for, well, I might have to start over, but let's start here. So we're going to do an S3 product, and let's do a notification to myself when it comes in. Let's hit next. We want this to come from a specific file location. Now, we set up a specific file location for our S3 bucket, which is this one. We will come back to there in a second just to go over what how that was set up. Let me just refresh this automation. Maybe it was just timing out. There we go. So it looks like we've got that automation that ran. It did that import. Let's go back to this data extension. Fingers crossed, hopefully it's populated. And let's go to that product feed. And there it is. There's that data populated from that file drop automation. Okay, now that we've got that populated, let's do this using an S3 bucket. So again, we're going to clear out that data. And let's go back to our automation, and let's go to the file location for this S3 bucket. So we had created a file location for the S3 bucket. We won't go into incredible detail on this. We're going to be writing a blog post on this on hands-on SFMC. So we'll cover that in a little bit more detail another time. But when you create a S3 bucket file location, you follow this by selecting the simple storage service. You're going to use an access key. You put in the bucket name and the access key ID. So going back over to my Chrome tab, let me just show you in S3. So this is our S3 bucket. Here is the name of that S3 bucket. That's what you put in the file location. And this is a particular user that you'll want to set up in the IAM in AWS. That's going to give you an access key that should allow you to provide that detail that you need for that file location. And then just to visualize what we're doing here, so it's going to be this bucket test 3+ bucket. And here is that same file, that NTO product feed file that we've dropped into our bucket. All right, so let's go back into Marketing Cloud. So now that we've, this file location is set up, let's go back into our automation. We've got that selected, and let's paste in that naming convention for that file. We'll need to, be very specific to the file that you want to bring in from the S3 bucket. Let's hit next. And again, we're going to want to select the data extension that we want to update. And let's go to that product feed. Next. And then same thing we're going to do. We want to map these this relationship manually. So again, we're going to want to bring over product view. Image, we'll do price, sales price, line, and link. Again, just for this exercise, we're going to use overwrite. We're going to click next, and then same summary screen, so same import activity. Let's hit save, and then let's run this once. We're just going to run just this this activity. Run and fire that off. Okay, so we'll give that a minute to do its thing. Oh, it's already doing its thing. And the last part that we're going to want to do is we want to do an export of a file to the export FTP folder, so that we can have our data lake or third-party system pull data from Marketing Cloud. So it looks like that worked. Let's go back to that data extension. And let's see if that data got populated. There's that product feed. And there it is populated from the S3 bucket. So two different ways to import data on an automated way, sort of walking through that end to end. Okay, our last example is how to export data. And I want to pull up this query just as an example of what's a typical data that you're going to be exporting to out of Marketing Cloud to maybe your data lake. So like I said before, maybe your data lake has all of that data. Maybe it is Data Cloud, where all your data is populated for all of your subscriber engagements. Maybe Marketing Cloud, you handle SMS and email. You might have retail visits. You might have web visits. So all that's going to be captured in your data lake. So you want to pull all of this data from all those different sources. So one of those examples is that you might want to pull click activity for your subscribers from Marketing Cloud. So in this example, we're going to use a SQL query to pull in data from the click data view. We want to pull in this example, just because we don't have as much activity on the sandbox, we're pulling in all unique clicks from the event date was greater than to the last 30 days. So it's going to populate a subscriber key. It's going to populate the URL of where they clicked. And then it has the event date. So this might be helpful information for your data lake. Obviously, the subscriber key is going to be helpful to determine who that would be, who actually engaged. The URL will tell you, where they engaged, and the event will just give you a date stamp of when they engaged as well. So, we're using Query Studio. Highly recommend getting Query Studio. It's a free application. It allows you to build your queries in Marketing Cloud, without having to create a query and data extension just to validate your data. So there we go. Just ran, and again, it's not a whole lot of data, but if you're a larger account might have millions of records that are being updated and being exported out to the export folder. So there's an example. What we want to do is create an automation that does a couple of things. We want to use this query that's going to populate a data extension, and then we're going to want to extract that data using a data extract to the safe house, and then we're going to want to file transfer that to the export folder within the FTP and see that get populated. So let's go to our data extension. So just to save time, we created a data extension called this engagement DE data extension. So let's just clear out this data just so that we can start fresh. And I also want to go to the FTP to this export folder. And I just want to delete this file just so that we can have a new file come in here for this use case. Okay, so let's go and create our third automation. So we're going to go back to our automation folder. Let's go to our hands-on folder, Auto Studio. We're going to create a new automation. Let's do this, call this export _auto. Let's just copy that. We're going to hit done. Let's hit save. This is going to be a scheduled, like you might do this every morning. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create a query based on what we built in Query Studio. We're going to create a new query activity. Let's put it under our hands-on folder. And let's call it our export auto. Put this under our hands-on folder. And let's go back and find our query. And we're just going to paste this into this query. Let's validate it. And we did look like it works in Query Studio. Should be good there. Hit next. And then let's go find that data extension that we want to populate that data. And that was an Auto Bootcamp engagement data extension. And we're just going to overwrite that data for this use case. Perfect. So we've got our query, got to populate our data extension. Next thing we want to do is we want to extract that data that comes from that data extension, and so that we can drop it into the export folder. So export auto, we'll name this. For the file naming convention, we're just going to use the name of the data extension. For simple purposes, you might want to do a year, month, and date stamp if you're doing this on a regular basis. We're going to use a data extension extract. Here's an important part. This is where you want to put the external key of the data extension that you're looking to import or to drop into the safe house. That's where we want to drop that in there. Select these 3 areas, leave it as comma delimited, hit next. And there is the data extract. That's part 2. Now part 3 is the file transfer. So let's select file transfer. We're going to create a new file transfer activity. I'm going to call this export auto, just like the others. Oops. And we're going to move from a safe house. Click next. The file naming pattern, again, we're going to want to use that same file name. Now we've got a file location set up with this enhanced export folder. Let's go back to setup. And under your file location, you can set up different types of file locations for the import folder, the export folder, and other folders. So for instance, this is our import folder. You can see for the location type, there is a standard one that imports directly into that import folder that you saw in FileZilla. We're going to be using this tracking data, so it sort of aligns with what we're looking for today. Again, this is the engagement data. And so you can see that's slightly different. This is the FTP site export directory. So it is standard, the import and export, already set up for you. You just need to create those file locations and name them, and that should work for you. So let's go back to our automation. We're going to select that tracking data. And we don't need to encrypt that file. We can just hit next and finish. So let's hit save. And let's run this once. Select all activities and run. So it's going to go through the process, starting right away, yay. And it's going to populate that data from those clicks data views. We should see this data extension get populated very soon. So that was engagement DE. It's already got populated, so it's doing its thing. Fantastic. And now we want to get this so that it is transferred to a safe house, just got transferred to the safe house. And now we should hopefully, with the file transfer, get that file dropped into that export folder so that we can access it. And again, with your FTP software, you'll want to connect it to the FTP so that you can pull files from the export folder or drop files into the import folder or wherever you need to do that. So we'll just give this a second to refresh. There we go. Completed. Looks like everything went well. So then let's go open up our FileZilla. And let's go to the import folder and let's go back to the export folder. There's that file. dropped in at 8:43 a.m. on December 10th. Now let's, I want to delete this. So one of the things that you can do with this FTP software is that you can set up a folder in your, in your personal directory so that you can pull in this data and validate it. So, it might be helpful as you're working with that, say it's a third-party provider, you want to validate the data and make sure it looks right before you have them drop it in. So we're just going to bring this over to this FTP files folder in my my system, and then let's just go open up that file. So let's see, this is under the SFTP file, and we'll look at all files. Let's look at this engagement data, DE. Yes, we want to open it. So it looks like it's comma delimited, and we won't do all the settings that would make sense here. Let's see if we do comma, see if that works, and finish. And then let me just pull over this file. That popped up in my other window. And let's just take a look at what we've got here for data. So cool. So we've got that subscriber, we've got that event date and a date format that's helpful, and we've got that URL so we know where they clicked. So seeing all this data. So there it is. There's that data that we pulled in from a click data view, brought into Marketing Cloud, and we populated that data extension, and then we exported it to the export folder. And then we just downloaded it so that we could take a look at it. All looks good. So then you could give the sign to whoever's working with the data lake to say, yep, you can start importing these on a regular basis, all the data, or refine it depending on what they need. So hopefully that gives you 3 different examples of how to import, export data in Marketing Cloud. I know we've got a few more minutes. Just want to cover a couple of the areas we didn't get a chance to cover, which is the Salesforce data that is being populated through those synchronized data extensions. We've all probably have seen this, but we'll just cover it real quick. When you do set up the connector, you can set up all of these. I'll bring in all of those, synchronize all of those objects into the Marketing Cloud environment. So under Contact Builder, under Data Sources, this is where you would be determining which objects you're bringing over. Again, you need to set up the connector first. And you can see we've got like the contact object, campaign object, we have the lead object, all of those objects that are being synced over. You can determine how many you want to bring over. And then these are synced every 15 minutes. So the data is relatively fresh automatically from Salesforce CRM. And one other area that we didn't cover in detail, but again, we do have this session covered before in an earlier session, is the standard ETL process. Here is that automation that we walked through building. I think we both did it in a hands-on session and an earlier session in the fundamentals. The basics of this are very similar to what we stood up. We created a query that created a list of records. We extracted that, dropped it to the safe house. We transferred it, but in this example, we would transfer it to the import folder. And then here we're using the import functionality, very similar to what we set up, except for this is updating all subscribers. Very similar process that we just walked through today using all 3 of these activities. But this is sort of your standard ETL process, automated process that you need to update all subscribers on a regular basis. And then one last thing I wanted to cover, I know we've covered this in the Data Cloud Bootcamp, is where that data comes in from Data Cloud. So when you set up those activations and segments in Data Cloud, it will populate data extensions under your shared items. shared data extensions, typically customer 360 segments here, and you can see quite a few that we've set up. But you can see a folder is created depending on your settings, and you can see data that is coming from Data Cloud. So here's an example in this use case where we are pulling in mobile subscribers who recently signed up to a mobile app. They don't have a subscriber key, right? So if you were pulling this in directly from that mobile app into Marketing Cloud, you wouldn't have that unified to determine the subscriber key. And so that's the advantage of using Data Cloud, where we're taking that mobile ID. We're also pulling in Salesforce CRM data, Marketing Cloud data, enterprise data into Data Cloud, and we're unifying that individual. And you can see that we are using a subscriber key, that person was a known individual in either as a lead or a contact sorry, these are all contacts 003 in our environment, so you don't have to duplicate those subscribers. You can see in these examples, this is a mobile app ID. So this is someone that couldn't be unified, but that's why you want, definitely use Data Cloud if you can, because of their amazing unification, data unification that it offers. But that's how they're populated in, that data is imported into a data extension from Data Cloud using activations. Let's go back to, before I move on, to summarize, any questions from anybody? No. Okay, let me go back to my deck and we'll wrap it up. Okay, 5 tips. Map out your data needs first. You can see we had a variety of different ways to get this data in. To really understand what you need to do, what's the frequency, the size, all of that. Usually good to outline that. Experiment with as many of these options. Try manual, try the file drop. Just even getting set up with an FTP and dropping a file in the FTP is worth exploring. Get to know your SFTP. If you just find FileZilla, it's free. Some organizations do lock that down, so you may not be able to have access to it, but it's always good just to see the back end, see those folders, the import, export, create those folders, get familiar with file locations and all of that. But it's always good to have visibility into those, into the import, export folders, and especially if you want to, pull out those files to validate them as they're being exported and imported in. Try to keep it simple. Don't be overly complicated and say, hey, let's do an S3 bucket right off the bat. Try to keep it simple and add complexity later once you've got a little bit more of a mature process. And definitely document your process along the way. There are access keys, there's passwords, there's all this type of data that you want to make sure you're keeping good documentation so that if something breaks, you can go back and it's, if something was on a set it, forget it type of thing, you can go back and troubleshoot, knowing that you've got all the access that you need to do that. And that's it. That's our session on import and exporting. So cool, all the different options that Marketing Cloud has to do that, and its amazing integration with Salesforce CRM, and especially lately with Data Cloud. Any questions? If not, I'll pass it over back to you, JD.
Football, basketball.
I don't see any questions, Tim, and thank you for covering it in all the details. And for everybody who is preparing for the admin cert as well, there will be some questions expected on the import and export, and then data extract, the flow, what kind of activities we need to use. So, and there is generally a confusion when to use which activity when it comes to file transfer. So please follow this along and then make sure you understand everything properly. And any questions, please post on the Slack channel. And I will be uploading the recording at the earliest possible. Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Hope to
Bye.
see you. See you in the next session. Bye.